So, you get some interesting characters. Meet some very
Did
interesting
you have to negotiate with the parole board?
Yes. What you do is the more you try to make the best picture for your client, show them in their best light. Now, my client said, I never killed that woman. I was told to look out. But no one saw anybody that he was looking out for. So, you can make your own judgment whether he did or did not. But in the end, he was someone who truly was rehabilitated. The idea of the American prison system was that people can be rehabilitated. We just don't lock them up forever. And so that was some of the types of folks that I had as clients. We had another guy I had as a client who was a Ku Klux Klan person. And he was helping the Klan to make money by threatening people's businesses, and if they didn't give money to the Klan, what would happen is they would blow up their business. They would burn down their business. So, he got out, and he had a lady who had been writing to him all the time. Like, did you see some of these shows, prison shows, where people write prisoners? Well, he had this lady writing to him all the time, and she came and visited him in prison. And so he got out, and all of a sudden, about 2 weeks later, my wife makes a call. She says, can I take the call, Conrad? She says, who is it? She says, he'll know who it is. And so I get on the phone. It was my prisoner. I said, what are you calling me about? He says, well, I thought you got out of prison. He said, well, I did. But I had a problem. I was staying with this woman that, kind of liked me and stuff. Well, the government says, the cops said that I molested her daughter. And I said, okay, let's see. I don't think that's a federal offense. And I only work when you're in the federal prison. Hello, you get to know our fine public defender system. And then I said, how did you get my number? He says, I'm a criminal. I can get any sex number. Now, she was not very happy about that. How does this guy know where we live? So.
All right, so let's now move to the, you have a lot of places, so let's go to the, when you were a prosecutor.
Yeah, we're going to go into stuff about prosecution.
About the DA. When you worked for the Janesville DA, and the traffic court. They'll all be very interested in traffic court next.
We had, I started out when I also was a law student. I did a lot of things. I put people in jail, and the other days I'd go to someplace else and take people out of jail. Out of jail in the federal system, in the state system. So what happened is, I worked several days a week in a district attorney's office in Wisconsin. And we had all kinds of cases. I did all the children who had trouble, juvenile offenders, and I did all the people who were doing minimal misdemeanor type crimes. And so you saw things that were very disturbing to me as a citizen. We had police officers who would take someone and they would smash their head against a cop vehicle when they were taking them in. And they'd say, well, that's just, the kids deserve it. Nobody deserves to be treated like that. And so you'd see things that were just really bad by cops. Well, the police would come to you, if I was the prosecutor, and say, could you find out who the defendant is? Because when you ask, I want you to ask me the questions, I know who it is. I said, I am not going to be part. If you don't know, you answer the question honestly. You don't know. And I'll ask you, why don't you know? And he'll say, well, I've arrested 50 or 60 people since then, I don't remember. I said, no, that I can live with. I can't live with you lying, and I will not be part of you lying to me. Or to the court. Or to a jury. Because a lot of times, police officers don't always tell the truth. Shocking. But again, that's something you find out. And you would negotiate things where a lot of times we would work out something between the prosecution and a defense lawyer. So that people could get on with their lives, maybe pay a fine and do some alternatives to hard jail time. Particularly if they had positive things that you could say about them. That was true, that you could verify. And so we did a lot of negotiation. And when you're talking about criminal stuff, everything you do, very seldom do you go to trial in a criminal case. Why is that? It's expensive, time-consuming. How many people do you have to have involved? Federal jury, you have to have police officers or court personnel. They have to be watching that prisoner. The person's they haven't been criminally, found guilty yet, but they're still an accused. Okay, and so they're probably in handcuffs, that kind of stuff. So you want to make it sometimes there's easier ways and better ways to handle it. And some of these things, you see a lot of people that we saw as prisoners when I worked, they were not necessarily as much a criminal mind as they had mental illness. Or they might have had a drug problem. And that caused really a lot of what they did that was criminal. It wasn't that they were, let's go rob somebody today, because that's just like robbing people. It was basically because of other things going on in their lives that were bad things. But you'd say, hell, there's things you have to look at when you're judging and how long someone goes and stays in prison. Because it's expensive for the government. So we would have a lot of those sort of negotiations. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'd like to kind of go through why negotiating legal matters. Because as I say here, the courts take a long time to settle contested criminal and civil matters. Civil defense counsel may get some sentencing advantages if their client pleads guilty, because you save the government time and money. Save the prosecution having to plead their case. And in certain cases, okay, my client is willing to go ahead and serve maybe in a halfway house, or do something else, and admit to the guilt, and you don't have to try. Now, generally, if someone truly feels that they had not committed a crime, generally they're not going to agree to that, of course. But if there's something really, it's probably likely that it did happen, that's something that you'll think about. And many current federal and state laws require the courts and lawyers to negotiate settlement of cases. For instance, if you go to almost any case now in a civil matter in a court, your lawyer is required to try to think of going to arbitration, or some sort of, they call mediation, to try to resolve in a civil matter, like an automobile case or something like that, to the insurance company, rather than going to full-blown trial. Why? Because it's very expensive. Every time, all of you have auto insurance, right? Every time your bill goes up, because a lot of us lawyers have been happily suing people, and what happens is it costs the insurance companies more. What do? Do they take it on themselves? They pass it on to you, the policyholders, right? In many other jobs, I used to work for a law firm that represented insurance companies. So I see how that works too. So these are all some of the things that can get you in trouble. And so the laws now, Congress, state legislatures, local governments now are requiring people in civil cases to try to reach settlement, where the facts and other factors make contested legal cases too expensive, too time-consuming, and there's no good reason to do it. And when can you not negotiate legal matters? Almost never. Even if I can't negotiate between that person going to trial, I may negotiate what kind of trial that person has. I may be able to give that person some chance to do certain things, alternatives than just sitting in prison, that would benefit that person and society, as opposed to just having that person sit there and, basically doing nothing. So, when do you not negotiate? Almost never. And almost everything you do as a lawyer is negotiation. Everything. There's nothing that's always written in stone. If you believe that, you're a bad lawyer. So, negotiation, when does it not work? When one party has all the power and all the, they have all the chips, and the other party has nothing that they can trade. There's nothing that good they can do. Those are the toughest cases. And those are the ones that a lot of times will be the ones that go for full trial. And some of those are things like, for instance, what just recently happened in Oregon, where the guy, say he had lived and not had shot himself. He probably, because of what he did and how many people he killed, even if he had clear some mental illness issues and some other things, the state and the people would want him tried because of the damage he did to all these people's lives by killing those people. So those are the cases. There's not a lot of negotiation in those type of cases because it's just impossible to negotiate some of those type of things. Okay, want to go on to the next one? Okay, things that can be negotiated. When you work, like I work with people in Congress and when legislatures and government does regulations, like I work at FEMA, we have tons of regulations. We write regulations all the time. And how do we do that? We have people that don't like them, we negotiate with them to work out something that's a compromise, so then Congress and the agencies can go ahead and get those through without court legal battles. Other things, court cases, you negotiate all kinds of things. Like I mentioned to you, where the court is held, the level of punishment, what kind of things the person will be tried for. And sometimes the way the laws are written is it's like the same crime can be described in 5 different ways. But in some of those ways, you may just get Say like a situation where you'd be under house arrest. Other situations where you do hard time in prison for the same crime, depending on how it is framed and how serious the situation is. And that's something that is negotiated between who? A prosecutor and a defense lawyer on behalf of the parties. And other things are negotiated. These things are generally, there is no government involvement. It's between two parties who have an issue, like labor contracts between a union and a business. Or you have something in a divorce between two people who are getting divorced. How is that going to work, and who gets what, and how is that handled as far as property and child rights and all those sort of things. Contracts, another area of that, or things called intellectual property rights, things like rights to movies or plays or anything else that, or internet stuff. Almost everything is copyrighted on the internet, which you find out if you try to ever go ahead and use that stuff and send it out like it's yours. You'll get to know lots of my fellow members of the bar in ways we hadn't planned on getting to know. Not a good thing for you to do that. So patents and copyright. So those are all some of the things that can be negotiated. And some of those things, what happens, how do you get to the Supreme Court? When negotiation fails. Or the one side, you negotiated, but they don't like what they came up with. And what do they keep doing? Keep appealing. Is it expensive to appeal? Absolutely. It takes years sometimes to get a case up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Some of the people who are doing like the criminal people I had, they'd be in prison for 5 to 6 years before they get actually their case heard by the Supreme Court if it has gone through the court system. So let's go into the next one.